everyone, this is 𝙁𝙁𝙀𝙎, your host of the Freedom Report, and today's show is about chaos, because we literally have chaos everywhere. It's in the economy, it's in the globe. What is chaos? I'm going to describe chaos theory to you so that you can understand where things aren't linear, things don't go along a straight line. Chaos theory, according to ScienceDirect.com, describes the qualities of the point at which stability moves to instability or order moves to disorder. For example, unlike the behavior of a pendulum, which adheres to a predictable pattern, a chaotic system does not settle into predictable pattern due to its non-linear process. Or translated into common speak, the stuff's hitting the fan. And I mean, it's hitting the fan everywhere, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to start with economics, and we're going to get into the hurricane, and then unfortunately, we're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East. We're going to jump right into it. These are all things, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to be aware of. So let's first talk about what's going on in the economy. I'm just picking out stuff that I think is the most important. We'll get into it. Durable goods orders were flat in August, beating forecasts of a sharp decline. Now, it kind of makes it sound like it's not too bad, but durable goods orders were up 9% last month, and I commented last month, wow, that's a blip on the radar, because durable goods hadn't been doing terribly well. What's a durable good? Anything that lasts, like a refrigerator, a car, something that's not perishable, not stuff you put in your refrigerator or anything that's like a 6-month type of deal. A durable good that you might buy in the economy, that you may spend a fair amount of money on. Could be a television, those types of things. Orders were flat versus expectation of 3% decline. So actually a little bit better than economists thought, but it's way down from last month. It says here, orders for U.S. durable goods were flat in August, the Commerce Department said Thursday. The result, which was much better than anticipated. Economists had forecasts a 3% fall in orders for durable goods, products made to last at least 3 years. A big chunk of the beat in headline orders relative to the consensus was due to a surprisingly small decline in aircraft orders, said U.S. economists at Pantheon Macroeconomics. Overall transportation orders still fell 0.8%. Huge swings in durable goods orders over the past few months have masked weaknesses in the manufacturing side of the economy. Core orders are up a modest 0.3% over the year. Listen to this sentence. Huge swings in durable goods orders over the past few months have masked weaknesses in the manufacturing side of the economy. Let's go straight to that. Should we? The S&P Global U.S. Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index. These are the people that buy stuff to make the stuff that you buy. They know what's going on. Factory employment falls at a sharper pace as manufacturing downturn deepens, is the headline on spglobal.com. The sharpest fall in new orders since June of 2023. Job shedding in the industry intensifies, and output price inflation quickens despite a slower rise. It's faster, getting faster. And you can see here, anything below the 50 line is a retraction or a decrease, if you will. Anything above 50 is an increase. Above 50, we're growing. Below 50, we're not growing. We haven't grown consistently since the end of 2022. We had a couple of nice months in there. But if you look at a technical chart, this is basically hits the line, falls down, hits the line, and falls down again. And usually that's called a double top. When it doesn't stay above the line, it means we're probably about to have a sharp fall off. It says here, according to the report, the U.S. manufacturing sector moved deeper into contraction territory at the end of the third quarter of the year. Output and new orders both fell at sharper rates in September amid demand weakness and political uncertainty. Meanwhile, employment decreased at the strongest pace since the start of 2010 if the COVID-19 pandemic period is excluded. So we've had the most job loss in manufacturing since 2010, minus the time in which the government shut everything down due to the health scare. So in other words, normal economic activity. More positively, business confidence ticked higher amid optimism that new business will pick up following the presidential election. Well, it could, but what in the economy really tells us that that's going to happen? Are we really blaming all this in the upcoming presidential election? When has a presidential election ever caused manufacturing to just start to crater? I don't, that's hopefulness, and I appreciate that, the authors of the report, but I mean, come on, seriously? Meanwhile, the rate of input cost inflation softened but remained marked, and firms increased their selling prices at the fastest pace since April. So they're catching up to all the inflation we had. Even though they said it softened a bit, it's still bad. New orders decreased for the third month running with a rate of contraction the sharpest in 15 months. That's not a short-term trend. 15 months is a medium-sized trend. Pay attention to that. New export orders to the rest of the world were also down to a larger extent than in August, as geopolitical issues and demand weakness, notably in Europe, one of our largest trading partners along with China, led to a fourth consecutive decline. With new orders continuing to fall, manufacturers scaled back their production. It's all starting to domino down, okay? Listen to this comment. Chris Williamson, chief business economist at S&P Global Market Intelligence. Quote, the September PMI survey brings a whole slew of disappointing economic indicators regarding the health of the U.S. economy. Factories reported the largest monthly drop in production in 15 months in response to a slump in new orders, in turn driving further reductions in employment and input buying as producers scaled back operating capacity. Not doing too good. Let's move over to inflation. I want to bring to you a speech by one of the Fed governors, Michelle W. Bowman, at the Georgia Bankers Association. She's giving a speech, recent views on monetary policy. She was a dissenting opinion in the Fed dropping interest rates by 0.5 percentage point. She said it only should have been a quarter. Listen to her comments. Good morning. I would like to thank the Georgia Bankers Association for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity to share my views on the U.S. economy. In light of the recent FOMC meeting, I will begin my remarks by providing some perspective. Update on the most recent meeting. In order to address high inflation for more than 2 years, they're admitting there's high inflation, the FOMC increased and held the federal funds rate at a restrictive level. That would have been the 5.25% to 5.5% that it had been at for a while. At our September meeting, however, the FOMC voted to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by 0.5 percentage point to 4 to 3/4 to 5. So it's a little bit of a moving target. They give themselves a quarter point, kind of adjust as they go along, make little mini adjustments. And to continue reducing the Federal Reserve security holdings. So that's tightening. They're not buying security holdings anymore, they're selling them while also dropping interest rates. As the post-meeting statement noted, I dissented from the FOMC's decision, preferring instead to lower the target rate by 0.25 percentage point to between 5 and 5.25. Last Friday, once our FOMC participant communication blackout period concluded, the Board of Governors released my statement explaining the decision to depart from the majority voting members. All right, got all that stuff. So why am I reading this report? Well, look at her economic outlook. First thing's inflation. I'm just going to address this one point out of her thing. You guys can go and read this at federalreserve.gov if you want. Economic conditions and outlook. In recent months, she says, we have seen some further progress on slowing the pace of inflation, with monthly readings lower than the elevated pace seen in the first 3 months of the year. The 12-month measure of core personal consumption expenditures, or PCE, which provides a broader perspective than the more volatile higher frequency reading, has moved down since April, although it came in at 2.7% in August, again remaining well above our 2% goal. The persistently high core inflation largely reflects pressure on housing prices, perhaps due in part to low inventories of affordable housing. In other words, all the housing's too expensive. That means the inventory of affordable housing has shrunk because nobody can afford houses at their current price. In other words, the housing market's crashing. You know how they use this speak to kind of say, well, we just haven't had affordable housing? No, we got the same housing mix we had before. That doesn't change over a month or 2 months. It takes a long time for that to change, especially consider all the houses ever built. It would take years to change that in reality. No, it's that people can't afford them because inflation's too high, prices are too high, and so are interest rates on mortgages. I love their flowery language. They're saying that the real estate market is starting to turn down. Anyway, let's look at real inflation. Should we? At shadowstats.com. Thank you to John for putting this out. He is an economist, and he's using the government's inflation measures that we had originally up to the late 80s, early 90s, when they started making all these changes. So in other words, this is official inflation, but before they started doing all the goofy stuff with the CPI and the inflation numbers, which I outlined in a video 2 weeks ago, please go watch that. I'll walk you through this section of the second chapter of my book where I go all through inflation and why the government's been screwing around with the inflation numbers and effectively lying about real inflation for a long time, basically dating back. So if you want to know what the numbers would be and you want to compare it to the numbers that they used to report in the 80s and before, you have to use this website. As far as I know, he's the only guy that does this, and he does the best job of it. Inflation's a lot higher. If you look at the 1990 base, before they made the most recent set of goofy changes to inflation, we're well over 10%, probably sitting at like 14%, somewhere like that. If you use 1980 base before they made any changes, and it was just straight how are prices rising, then you're well over 15%, 17% coming down, though, a little bit. So it has come down in the last year or so, but it's still much higher than what they report, which is in red. So you can tell inflation's higher. And the way that they describe, well, we have less inventory of affordable housing, that just means houses got more expensive. It's not like of all the houses ever produced and for sale, it's taken hundreds of years. Okay. It's not like they just stopped offering small houses, said, we're just going to go build a bunch of McMansions. No, it's just nobody can afford this crap. And part of it's because the Fed raised interest rates, which, by the way, does have a downstream effect on mortgage rates. And the Fed did that to tighten. But what happened, this is the after effect of what the Fed does. The Fed raises rates. It affects affordability of houses. It affects inflation. Kind of what happens. All right, on to the port strikes. I had said on September 13th, you can go check my Twitter, and I retweeted this today. So go check Twitter. September 13th, I warned that the strikes at Boeing and the strikes on the eastern and western ports would affect the supply chain and that there would be a little bit of supply chain chaos. Well, let's talk about that. U.S. port strike, according to Zero Hedge, U.S. port strikes erupt. First shutdown in 50 years sparks fears of supply chain crisis. Harold Daggett, who leads the International Longshoremen's Association, says he earned $728,000 from the union last year and another $173,000 as a president emeritus of a local union branch. The New York Times said the union boss previously owned a 76-foot yacht, the Obsession, and runs around town in a Bentley. And Daggett said in a video, I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means. Nobody does. In other words, he's looking for increases for the port workers, and he's willing to shut down the economy. And by the way, if you go on Twitter and watch this video and listen to what he says, he essentially says, we're going to get what we're going to get. And if it affects the economy, it affects the economy. The unions are dug in. And these ports process 43% of all the goods that come into the U.S., almost half. And they're on strike. They're going on strike. Okay. That, along with the hurricane, along with all of this other stuff, is going to make it very, very hard for people to get goods. If you look at what the hurricane's done to North Carolina, I mean, shutting down entire roads, mass devastation. It's worse probably than what the news has reported so far. The government's not running in there and doing stuff. The government's saying they are. But in reality, FEMA's been slow to react according to what I see in the news. And these people are hurting, and, our response has been slow. And, there is a bridge there that leads to some quartz deposits, which are used by Silicon Valley for technology. It's the only supply in the U.S. of size, and the bridges leading to those mines have been shut down. How are we going to get the stuff that we need to build technology? We can't. I mean, this literally could put a severe crimp in our ability to make the things that we need to have the lifestyle we have now, because it's going to affect the tech industry all over the place. It's going to affect the tech industry. All of these things are going to start causing supply chain chaos. Remember what happened during the shutdowns in 2020, 2021? We talked about the supply chain costs and how it affected prices and availability of goods, and people were fighting at Walmart over toilet paper. I literally was in LA at the time on a trip. We went into Walmart. We weren't getting toilet paper. We went in to get some supplies. And there were two ladies there literally hitting each other, duking it out over the last 8 or 12 pack of toilet paper on the shelf. They literally were hitting each other, and it's toilet paper. Can you imagine what happens if 43% of goods that we import in this country, we can't get them? Because remember, I just talked about manufacturing, the fact that we don't make stuff. We don't make stuff, and manufacturing is crashing. At the same time, we can't import stuff. At the same time, one of our biggest quartz deposit here in the United States is shut down. It's going to affect the technology sector. We're going to have supply chain chaos. Chaos theory. What is chaos theory? It's not linear. Things don't go up and down in a straight line. All of a sudden, stuff can just go bam. And can just crash. And that's what's happening. We haven't even gotten to the wars. Let's get to the wars. According to CNN, U.S. Secretary of Defense spoke with Israeli counterpart as Israel begins ground incursion in southern Lebanon. War. Iran's also involved, by the way. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke Monday with his Israeli counterpart, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. to review security developments in Israeli operations, according to a Pentagon readout of the call. Austin and Gallant agreed on the necessity of dismantling attack infrastructure along the border to ensure that Lebanese Hezbollah, that's misspelled H-E-Z, Hezbollah, cannot conduct October 7th style attacks on Israel's northern communities. Major General Pat Ryder, Pentagon spokesman, wrote in a statement. The Israel military said it had begun a limited ground operation in southern Lebanon targeting Hezbollah. Earlier Monday, President Joe Biden told reporters that we should have a ceasefire now when asked if he knew about the special forces. But guess what? We're not. And the White House has come out and said they will support Israel and what's going on. Israeli strikes kill at least 13 in Gaza refugee camp. White House says mission creep is a real risk as it monitors Israel's incursion into Lebanon. You know what mission creep means? It means a bigger war. Mission creep. More war breaking out in the Middle East. I spent so much time when all of this started and at the beginning of this year warning and warning and warning about full-scale war in the Middle East, and it's here. It is here. It is here. Also from CNN, one of the latest stories, Iran launches wave of missiles at Israel. I think they lost 180 ballistic missiles. Some got through the Iron Dome and struck. You can see them here, boom, boom, in this little video down here. A lot of them got through and struck. Now, Israel is claiming no casualties. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what it says. Missiles intercepted over Tel Aviv, CNN reporter says. Video shows Iranian missiles in the skies across Israel. Iran says attack is in response to the killing of the Hezbollah leader. There's a Hezbollah leader that got killed. He was in a bunker, got killed by a bunker buster. So they're now attacking Israel. Iran's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan gives an update, all this stuff. More U.S. troops told to prepare to deploy to the Middle East. I think Biden, it said in the news, the Biden administration ordered thousands of troops. Have we declared war on Iran? Have we declared formal war on Hezbollah? Have we declared war in Lebanon? But we're sending troops and supplies, and Israel's over there striking back. They're striking Israel. Never in my life have I seen this start in the Middle East and it not lead to broader war. And I warned, and of course, this is what's happening. Think about chaos theory. What does the chaos theory say? I'm going to reread it to you. Chaos theory describes the qualities of the point at which stability moves to instability or order moves to disorder. For example, unlike the behavior of a pendulum, which adheres to a predictable pattern, a chaotic system does not settle into a predictable pattern due to its nonlinear process. In other words, the stuff hits the fan and it doesn't go like you think. It all goes at once. When we talk about a crash of the markets economically, it goes slowly, then all at once, the waterfall. Well, guess what? That's true of all human behavior, especially war, especially the supply chain. All these things are just starting to blow up at the same time. It's chaos. It is chaos out there. What does that mean for our freedoms? I don't know. More war usually means less freedom. Economic disruptions usually means less freedom. We'll have to see what happens. But the stuff is hitting the fan, not just economically. It's all over the place. And we got all sorts of cultural things going on here in the US that's just really attacking our cultural traditions. Chaos. It's chaos. And it comes unpredictably and a lot of times all at once. And that's where we are. We're officially in a new era. And I'm not just talking economically or from a monetary perspective. It's chaos and more chaos. Will it continue to get worse? I don't know how it gets better. Maybe some of these things can be solved. We'll eventually rebuild from the hurricane. It's going to take a long time, decades to rebuild. Think about Hurricane Katrina and the devastation it did and all these other hurricanes. It takes decades and billions, probably trillions of dollars, given the damage that we're seeing. Roads are closed. They're having to airlift people in. Some people don't have power. There were stories on Twitter about people that couldn't get out. The roads wouldn't, out of, I think it's Asheville, wouldn't be fixed for 6 months. And, what do people do? Like literally they're going to have to crawl their way out over devastation and damage, or hopefully they have food. If you're living in an area and any area, which it could have any sort of weather related event or earthquake, anything like that, act of God, as they say, and you haven't stocked up on 6 months of food, maybe this hurricane will convince you to do it. If you're looking at the supply chain and you haven't gotten your meds and you haven't begged your doctor to get extra meds, or you haven't gotten the stuff to fix your car or the stuff to run your business or the food that you need to eat or the clothes that you need for work or the tools that you need to fix things around the house, it's not just about gold and silver or money. It's about being prepared. Chaos theory. It can go all at once. It can be nonlinear. It can just go all over, and that's what's happening. Chaos theory. And I said, some of these things will resolve over time. Some of these things look like they're going to get worse, and we don't even know what could come next. It's impossible at this point to predict everything that can happen. It's impossible. General preparedness, boy, that's going to come back in vogue. I would imagine general preparedness books are starting to fly off the shelves, and people are starting to figure out, look at all the stuff that's going on around me. What do I need to do? And a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, people thought you were nuts for doing any sort of preparation. Monetary, you bought gold or Bitcoin, you're a crank. Unless it was for an investment and you're trying to make a quick buck. But if you bought it because of instability in the financial system, well, you're wearing a tinfoil hat. You know, anyway. And the US government doesn't have the capability of dealing with it. And it appears that they're slow to deal with some of this in terms of the supply chain and the hurricane. And I mean, are they negotiating a union deal? And they're sending troops to the Middle East. This is bringing the US into that war, whether officially declared or not, which is what I warned. I've been warning for a while. Last October, I wrote an article on my blog. Blog's no longer up, but I wrote an article on my blog about being warned about this 10 years ago, the war part of it. And I think I'm going to repost that on Twitter. I read it again, and it scared me reading it again. It scared me recalling the story a year ago, and it scared me now. I think I published it on October 10th. So about a year later, when I warned about these wars expanding and the experiences I had with being warned about this back in 2014, I'm going to repost that. So stay tuned to social media. I'll repost that story. It's chaos. Chaos theory, it's a real deal. Get prepared now. That's all I got to say. Thanks, guys, for watching. We're going to end this one up about 22 minutes. I don't want to make it too long. We'll go back to gold and silver, specifically Thursday. Got a lot of interesting stuff. India, the largest gold imports in a while. That's positive news. More on the gold and silver. I told you last week that I felt like officially we got into the last stage of this raging bull market, which has been raging for a long time, by the way. Years and decades. Especially since 2000 when it really ticked up. But this is the final stage, and this eventually will lead to some sort of bluff. And I think it'll be years, and I mean years, so it's not something you want to day trade. Okay. Disclaimer, don't day trade. Because look at what's going on in the world and what's causing gold to go up. Economic issues, war issues, devastation issues, lack of confidence in the US government, lack of trust, major cultural issues going on here and in Europe and around the world. Does this look like it's going to be resolved anytime soon? Chaos theory. Boy, we got chaos. Will it get worse? Probably gets worse before it gets better, I would imagine, based on looking at similar situations in the past in history. We're going to follow it. This is what we do here at the Free Report. Thanks for sticking by us today, Thursday, Gold Silver Report. Till next time, Rob Kientz.